Welcome to the Rob Seco Field Ready Podcast with your host, Jim Robinson.
Hello, and welcome back to the Rob Seco Field Ready Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Robinson. In today's episode, we're going to play an interview between Master's Choice brand lead Scott Harris and Tractor Zoom CEO and founder Kyle McMahon. Tractor Zoom helps connect farmers with equipment inventory and value, especially in the scarce inventory market we're finding ourselves in today. Over the last year, equipment values are up 30 to 40% compared to a few years prior to 2021. So listen in to the interview to hear Kyle's and Tractor Zoom's view of the current ag economy, how long this run on prices and costs may last, and how you may want to approach your equipment buying decisions. So, we're going to play this episode from the MC Podcast, and I'll hand it off to them now.
I am so thankful that we were able to find an expert because I don't know a lot about a lot of things, but this is one area I know very little about. All I know is that my dad, I grew up on a farm, my dad bought the cheapest tractors he could find, and then tried to find one just a little cheaper than that one that he could buy next. And so we spent most of our time working on equipment. And so, I know that things have changed a lot, but why don't we kind of start off, Kyle? Why don't you tell us about Tractor Zoom and tell us about you. Tell us who you are and how you got started here.
Yeah, sure. So Tractor Zoom's on a mission to help people streamline business processes and really help farmers find value farm machinery as they're shopping. So, actually the business started a few years ago out of a personal market frustration of myself. I guess the quick backstory is I was in farmland private equity, and we had great data points to make good investment decisions. And then when it came time for me I was shopping for a Kinsey 3600 1223 interplant planter. And I just really struggled understanding what each planter was worth and really where they were located around the country. And I was actually shopping for one at auction because I knew I was going to want to do a little bit of rebuild and put what parts and precision parts I wanted to on it. And I ended up subscribing to 10 or 12 different newspapers and earmarking just a ton of auction websites. And it was frustrating. So I actually started a business, Tractor Zoom, where we help over 525 auction companies and over 1,100 dealer locations advertise their farm machinery to farmers. And we have the thesis of helping people be data-centric. So not just saying, hey, here's a tractor, go buy it. But now we're really starting to dive into the data to really help people understand what is the market doing. And let me tell you, we are in a pretty wild market right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I am smart enough to know that. I do know that it's a little bit wild right now. When I kind of was on your website and kind of clicking around, I think I might have talked to Andrew about this. I can't remember, our marketing director, but I said it seems like Auto Trader for tractors. I mean, is that like a fair way of saying it, to kind of relate to people maybe if they've never been on the website?
Yeah, that analogy is spot on. We have two sides of the business. One would be more like Auto Trader. We can go car shopping. You can go farm equipment shopping. And then we actually collect all the in-market data and comparable sales. And we've created a product that's used by a lot of dealers and banks that actually pay for the service. It's more like Kelley Blue Book. So we help people value farm machinery based on real-time, transparent market data transactions.
That's interesting. That's got to be extremely helpful. I know that, coming from I was with Master's Choice for 10 years and had left for just a little season and then came back. And in that season I was gone, I worked in a car dealership, and people really relied on Kelley Blue Book and Auto Trader and those things to really get an idea if it was a fair buy or just to try to get some kind of tools. And so I think the utilization of that by the farms would be extremely valuable. And so that's a really good idea. So, but before we kind of dive into, or kind of transition a little bit, I should say, kind of going into the big part of, I think the big thing in equipment right now is there's some challenges. out there right now. Just like in a lot of the industry, I feel like every podcast we talk about a different challenge that people are facing. But what is the biggest challenges a farmer's facing right now in relation to their equipment needs?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a couple of challenges that are top of mind. Number one is inventory and availability. I'm sure that is number one on everybody's mind. Where can I find XYZ piece of equipment, right? If you ask any dealer, as we look into our data set, late model, low hourly equipment is virtually non-existent. And on the flip side, we've actually done some surveys with many of the farmers who are on TractorZoom, and actually the number one pain point for farmers when they're buying and selling equipment, I should say 82% of farmers, number one pain point when buying and selling equipment is knowing what it's worth. So between the availability and knowing what it's worth, those are the biggest pains that farmers are challenged with right now. And, I really think going into 2022, we're going to continue to see this. We continue to see equipment climb. These commodity prices are continuing to climb. But there's not enough new availability for the demand that's out there. Following the 2021 net farm income, a lot of farmers had what they'd call a tax problem going into December, and they really wanted to spend some money. And frankly, many farmers, probably like your dad, Scott, neglected to upgrade equipment over the last 4 or 5 years because net farm income was down, right? The cash availability wasn't there. And then all of a sudden we have this boost to net farm income, and it's off to the races and everybody wants it, but there's not enough there. Something interesting that we continue to see in the market is based on the scarcity, we have, I guess you could call it asset accumulation. So typically in a healthy market, what we see is farmers working with their dealers and trading equipment. But in the fall, going into the fall, people realized that it was harder and harder to find the equipment they wanted, and it was also hard to find the parts they wanted. So they were buying, every time something broke, they'd buy 3 replacements because they were scared that they're going to have downtime in fall and they couldn't continue to harvest. So what that's done to the used equipment market is farmers have the cash availability to continue buying and not trading or selling. So it's taken all the inventory off the market, and that equipment is now residing on the farm. So if you had one combine and you had cash flow, many farmers, I should say, a lot of farmers were buying a second combine, or at least from the market. So then there was that took another combine off the market that wasn't available to be purchased, and next thing you know is we have a shortage of nearly every type of equipment out there.
Yeah, that's just unbelievable and crazy to think about. It's the old adage of supply and demand, right? And so it's naturally gonna occur. So then my natural question is how much, and I don't know if it's like maybe exact dollars or percentage wise, but how much has that shortage affected pricing in the marketplace?
Dramatically. So from a high level, if we start to look at volume at auction, so we track a lot. We track over 80% of farm equipment that's sold at auction, and so we have a really good understanding of the supply and demand in that market. And in 2021, there were 47% less combines and 23% less 175 plus horsepower row crop tractors brought to market.
Wow.
So in those combines, that's influenced the price by those used combines are now selling for 30% more than they were in 2020 or the beginning of 2021 today. And for row crop tractors, those are up 36%. So you have this massive boost to used equipment prices, of which typically they're depreciating assets, right? You buy a brand new tractor for $200,000 and the next year it might be worth 175,000. But we continue to see used selling at auction, sometimes even bringing more than what dealers are asking, because there's that demand and people don't recognize that they may have other optionality out there, and there's also the scarcity of the equipment. So think of supply down on average across all asset classes and used farm equipment, down around 30%, and values up 30 to 40%, depending what they are.
Wow. And that's across the board. We're talking, a brand new equipment, 1 to 2 year old equipment, 10-year-old equipment. I mean, it's kind of, maybe the percentages change, but that's pretty much across the board, right, Kyle, that you're seeing this increase?
Yeah, I don't want to shove my foot in my mouth by saying it's, if you bought a tractor last year, it's worth 30% more today, or you bought a piece of hand forge equipment, it's worth 30% more. Every asset class is a little bit different, but it's very supply and demand driven. So like planters, those have moved actually much less than tractors. New equipment prices are certainly going up. And that's what's also influencing the price of used. But I'm really talking about used machinery prices, and typically equipment that's within 10 years old.
Yeah, and that's a lot of expense, and something that was already, I mean, you would hear a lot of farmers complaining about the price of equipment way before this. And so now, to deal with this, I think particularly it would hit, what's going to hit any farm size, I would think, but it's always a trickle down effect in this type of thing. And a lot of times who seems to be hit the most hard by things like this is your small farms. I would relate that to when I was in the car business. It wasn't so much the people who were buying $40,000 vehicles. It was the trickle-down effect to the person who needed the $4,000 car, and now there's not $4,000 cars. They don't exist. Your $4,000 car is now a $7,000 car. And so I'm sure that probably is the same trend in equipment as well.
Yeah, well, Scott, I agree with you to a point, and I think where I might disagree to a certain extent is what one of the primary reasons I started the business is to leverage good data to help people make better decisions. And I think there's a lot of farmers out there who like newer equipment, they like trading, they like rolling. But if we look at data from in 2020, if you were to buy a brand new combine and then roll the next year, what that average trade in and the depreciation on that machine was, the cost per acre was between $60 and $80. Where your state, or like the Iowa State numbers, if you were to look at the custom farming rates, that's like $35. So it's actually the reverse psychology of, it's actually a terrible decision back then to have bought and sold the combine and only run it for a year because of that depreciation. And so going to your point, and I think it also goes back to maybe your story with your dad, is really understanding what we're trying to do and what we will do is help people understand the decisions along the depreciation curve. So historically, you've had more depreciation up front from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 5 years, right? You have more depreciation and cost in that. And then as that machine ages, let's say a 2,500 step hour combine, right? It's going to have very little depreciation, but you have all the maintenance cost. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so that's one of the things that probably a farmer maybe wasn't thinking about quite as much a few years ago as what they should have been, but now they definitely need to be thinking about these things. And so that kind of leads me to the next question is, kind of in your business, you work with a lot of different farms, a lot of different sizes, I would assume. What's generally the biggest mistake that a farm can make when it comes to buying or selling equipment?
That's a good question. And I think it kind of goes back to what I was just mentioning, which is the use of data and actually doing research instead of going with your gut. Going with your gut can be really expensive, especially if you start to break that down on the cost per acre. So we're really all about making data-driven decisions, understand where the market is. That's why a ton of dealers are leveraging our data because they want to know where the market's going. When's it going to fall out of bed, right? So trying to help make those good decisions. And the other portion of it is there's a trade-off of spending too much or thinking of the cost that way, and then the other side of it is the opportunity cost, which is if you don't have enough equipment, if you're still short. What's that look at when it's go time, when it's fit, you got to be in the field. what's that do? How's that impact yield? How's that affect overall profitability? So the things that we love to preach are using data to help you make the decision, whatever that might be, and really understanding if you're trading something in, what should trade-in value be? If you're looking to sell private party, what should that be worth? Should you be selling at auction or should you not? I can tell you right now, auctions are extremely hot, and if you're sitting on the sidelines trying to sell a piece of equipment and it's not moving, auction could be your best bet because it's amazing how quickly that market's reacted. One of the sayings we actually go from is, if you see a high price in 1 month, it's something to pay attention to. But if you see another high price in the second month, it's a trend that's starting to develop, and it happens in the third month. You better be acting upon that, because what happens at auction, we think of auction as the loss leader. If the market's going up, it's going to start at auction. If the market's going down, it's going to start at auction. So we love to pay attention to those industry trends.
That makes a lot of sense, and you guys have a large, extremely large data set that you're able to monitor and track that, which is something that a traditional, most farms they're not going to have access to that. I mean, and so, one of the things that you got to really consider or think about if you're not necessarily a manufacturer, but maybe just a dealer, is it sounds well and good to pay more for that used combine or planter than what you did. That's fine because you're going to turn around and sell it for more, right? The problem is, just like they're going to face in other industries, I think particularly like the car industry, that bubble is going to burst. I don't know when, I don't know how long it's going to be, but eventually it probably will burst, right? And then you don't want to be sitting on tractors that you've paid 30% more or given 30% more in trade value for it, then now you've got 10 of them that you can't hardly move. But that's one of the things that I'm sure is a valuable tool for the dealers that that are part of your system, to be able to kind of keep a trend on that, like you were talking about, and kind of see which way those prices are trending. So the next question I've got, kind of in relation to that, is, so I don't know if you've got it in your desk drawer there or not, Kyle, but I need you to get out your crystal ball. Right, and I need you to tell us, and we will hold you to this. You're going to be recorded. We're going to make sure that we come back to you in a year, or maybe a year, and we might give you a year and a half. But we're going to come back to you, and we're going to see how right you were. But if you got out your crystal ball, you can give us your best guess. How long can we expect to be kind of in this current landscape in relation to equipment and the equipment side of things? And, what are you hearing from manufacturers? What's the data telling you? Where are we going with this thing?
Yeah. The longer you make me predict, the more wrong I'm going to be if I have to go out to a year and a half. No, I want to use data to answer this question versus my gut, right? I just told your audience not to use your gut. So if we sit back and look at the data, you look at OEMs. I want to start with Scott Wine, the CEO of CNH Industrial. He came out and said last week on CNBC that they're having protracted equipment, right? So they continue to have chip shortage from the new market coming to new equipment being delivered. So if we continue to expect new equipment shortages, and we are in this bull commodity market right now. I think I read something last night that somebody was wondering if soybeans are going to go to $18.
I actually saw that. I saw that same article.
I don't know where commodity prices are going, but what's going on in geopolitics right now, I think everybody's saying, even from last week's WASDE report, we're in a pretty bull market right now. We continue to believe that farmers are going to demand newer equipment with high net farm income. So what we're seeing, and all the data points we're seeing, all of the we marketed $6.5 billion of farm machinery last year. As we aggregate all of that data, we look at geopolitics, we look at expected 2022 net farm income. We continue to be bullish, or we continue to expect equipment prices rising this year. Not at the same rate that they did last year. We're not going to see 35% year-over-year returns going up again. But new equipment, even though they're still having shortages, I think I've been hearing John Deere combines might be going up 18 to 22% in the 2023 model year. So as we see those massive increases from new, there's still going to be a demand to buy those. They have got some amazing technology that farmers, if utilized correctly, can still prove ROI on the farm. But this market's going to just continue going up, and it'll continue to be short. But I'm guessing by the end of this year, we'll start to see some of it start to alleviate. But the one question that I continue asking myself and our data team, Scott, is when this falls, or when commodity prices drop, when farmer sentiment drops, what will happen to the used market? Is it going to be a dramatic tear downward? Are we going to see year-over-year prices go down 30%? I really don't think so, because the biggest difference between the market we're in right now and the market in 2012 when we had, or 2013 we had high commodity prices, OEMs could turn on the spigot. Everybody could go buy new paint. And then people got themselves in trouble by buying too much and then not being able to really pay for it like they thought they would. So that new supply is going to be the biggest factor going into the used prices. So we could see a little bit of a downturn, but I think it's going to take more time than people realize if we go back down to sub $5 corn or $4.50 corn. Right? Inflation hasn't stopped. It'll be interesting to see how interest rates affect this. The government needs to probably act a little bit faster than they are right now to solve that.
Yeah, for sure. That's been a sentiment, in talking to different farms over the past couple months, is a serious concern on the inflation side, how this is all going to affect them, because farmers are historically. How do I say this? Worrisome people. They worry about a lot of things. They have to. That's kind of their job, right? Is to be thinking about a lot of different things and what could go wrong. But I think they're particularly anxious right now, just with a lot of the changes going on and not knowing how this is going to affect them. And so, a system or a program like what you guys have, the website like what you have, the tools you have out there for them. I mean. If I was in their position and having to make these purchases or selling this equipment, I'd be all over your system. There's no doubt about it. I think it's really well done. You guys definitely need to check out the website and check out what they have going on, because I think it's a huge benefit for you, for sure. So kind of one last final word, anything we've missed, Kyle, one little last piece of wisdom that you would want to pass on to individuals that are whether buying or selling?
Yeah, I think what we were talking about earlier, all of the data we have to help people make price-based decisions and valuing farm machinery, historically it's always been utilized by dealers, big banks, farm credits, super large equipment owners. And we've had a lot of demand from farmers saying, hey, I want that information. And we've been working really hard on developing a more of a free strategy for farmers to identify what something's worth. And here, a couple weeks ago, we just released what we call our price prediction model, or what's it worth feature. So if people are interested in what something's worth, our first kind of free version of this is if you just go to TractorZoom.com and you start to shop for equipment or tractors at auction, you'll start to see a price prediction widget on the site. So as something's coming up for auction, let's say it's a John Deere 8345R tractor with 3,000 hours, premium cab, ILS front suspension. We've developed kind of that Kelley Blue Book price where we're saying, hey, we believe it's going to sell for X price. And then we've actually given the farmers the ability to vote if they think higher or lower. So if they're interested in that piece that's coming up for auction, or it's going to go to auction in a week, you can start to see, okay, TractorZoom's data, all this data and power they have, here's what they think it's worth. And then here are all the other farmers voting on it, saying TractorZoom's right or wrong. And it's going to give a farmer a really good understanding of what he should be needing to go into that auction and be willing to pay for it. If 8 of 10 people are saying it's going to sell for higher, you might be ready to bid a little bit more than what we think it is. And so you're going to continue to see some really cool and neat data initiatives come out from us, really going back to our mission of helping people find and then value that machinery. So as you continue to shop, if there's something you're looking for at auction, go check out TractorZoom.com, find that piece that's coming up for auction. We might have a price prediction on it that'll help you be directionally correct on what you should be willing to pay. Or if you have something to sell that's up there with the value, go check it out.
Well, I'd like to thank Scott Harris and his guest Kyle McMahon from TractorZoom on having that great interview together. And if you have any questions or want to find out more, please visit TractorZoom.com. But be sure to tune in on the 1st and 15th of every month for new episodes of the Field Ready podcast. And until then, stay field ready.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Rob Seco Field Ready podcast. Join us next time to be Field Ready.
A Huda Media Production.